Welcome to the Contreras Report International Edition. Today we are focusing on the Caucasus region again, 60 days after a ceasefire was negotiated by Russia that Armenia and Azerbaijan signed on November 10th after a whirlwind 44 days of intense combat that drew the world's attention. The conflict was totally fought on Azerbaijani territory. The result was that Azerbaijan regained much of the 20% of its territory that Armenian forces had occupied for 26 years since the last ceasefire took effect in 1994. We are reporting today news of the aftermath of the November 10th agreement. Good news and bad news, but mostly good news. Here. It has been over 60 days since the Armenia-Azerbaijan war ended on November 10th with a Russian-brokered ceasefire agreement. With a few exceptions, the ceasefire has held, which is by itself a major achievement considering how devastating the 44-day war was, with military casualties of over 6,000 on both sides. Also, during this time, many ethnic Armenians have returned to Nagorno-Karabakh, and Azerbaijan has started implementing measures to demine and rebuild the liberated areas to enable hundreds of thousands of Azerbaijanis to return to their villages and towns and cities after nearly 30 years of forcible displacement. Nevertheless, some hotheads in Armenia still harbor feelings and hope for restoring the pre-war status quo, which would require the re-invasion of the city of Shusha, Hadrut, and other liberated areas, not to mention even a more devastating and costly war for Armenia. Considering that over 90% of Armenia's military capacity has been decimated during the war, these hotheads hope that Russia, which has 2,000 peacekeepers in the region, will come to their aid in a new war. Hence the military provocations that have been happening since the end of the war on November 10th. On December 28th, Azerbaijan's foreign minister sent a letter to the UN Secretary General informing him about how conscript soldiers, draftees, from Armenia were deployed, quote, into areas deeper inside territory of Azerbaijan to organize terrorist activities against the military personnel of the armed forces of Azerbaijan and civilians engaging in post-conflict rehabilitation and reconstruction in the areas concerned. 5 military servicemen of the armed forces of Azerbaijan and 1 civilian have been killed, and 2 more were wounded as a result of a series of these terrorist attacks, unquote. The letter also says that 62 members of this group were detained. Now, in case you didn't catch that number or the number of men involved, let me repeat it. 62 Armenian soldiers, not 2, not 20, 62. And as I said, quote unquote soldiers. However, the legal question is, are they soldiers according to the rules of war, or are they terrorists? Interesting question. If they were deployed into Azerbaijan territory after the November 10th ceasefire was signed by the leaders of the 3 countries, Armenia, Russia, and Azerbaijan, they are considered to be and are being treated legally as terrorists. Precedent for this is right here in the United States of America. During World War II, several German military men, soldiers, spies, and saboteurs in their other life were captured after they landed on Long Island outside New York City. They were tried, convicted, and all but one executed secretly. Now, some good news. Just hours ago, the Prime Minister of Armenia, the President of Azerbaijan, met in Moscow as guests of Russian leader Vladimir Putin. As a result of this very first post-war meeting, a new statement was signed establishing a trilateral committee to meet and to report on unblocking transportation links between and via Armenia and Azerbaijan, connecting these countries to third countries. In Azerbaijan's case, it allows it to build a railroad and highway lines between Azerbaijan, its western side, and its exclave territory, Nakhchivan, west across Armenian territory that will allow the two parts of Azerbaijan to be joined by rail and roads, protected rail and roads, as well as facilitate the transportation from mainland Azerbaijan to Turkey. Since the early 1990s, the two parts of Azerbaijan have been unconnected due to Armenian blockade, and all supplies to Nakhchivan had to be shipped through Iran and or Turkey for 3 decades. Also, Azerbaijan will allow Armenia to be connected by rail and roads to Iran and Russia via its territory, via Azerbaijan territory. Armenia stands to benefit from these routes tremendously. It also removes what the Armenian lobby used to convince the United States Congress in 1992 as an excuse to withhold any U.S. government aid to Azerbaijan by sponsoring the infamous Section 907 of the Freedom Support Act for newly independent post-Soviet countries in 1992. The Section 907 singled out Azerbaijan out of all 15 post-Soviet countries, prohibiting any aid to Azerbaijan when it needed this aid the most during its most difficult early years of independence. In fact, by punishing Azerbaijan, victim of Armenian aggression, occupation, and brutal ethnic cleansing, and rewarding Armenia, the Congress passed one of its most unfair legislation in history. The main excuse used for substantiating Section 907 was that Azerbaijan imposed transportation blockade over Armenia. What the pro-Armenian senators and congresspeople neglected to mention was that the two countries were at war that resulted in the occupation of around 20% of Azerbaijan's sovereign territory. However, blinded by Armenian campaign donations to American congressmen and a few votes in Los Angeles, this, quote, little easily, unquote, overlooked fact was not relevant for U.S. lawmakers, although Section 907 has been waived every year since 2002 because of Azerbaijan's important help to the U.S. in its fight against international terrorism. This disgraceful bill has not been completely repealed, but it should be. Now, with the new status quo in Karabakh and the imminent opening of all transportation links, the main argument for Section 907 will disappear as well. Any casual observation of the January 11th agreement concludes that Armenia can benefit immensely if it lives up to the peace deal. Simple reason. Armenia has been bypassed by billions of dollars worth of natural gas and oil pipelines from Azerbaijan to the west through the Republic of Georgia and Turkey. Countries that have been paid millions of dollars in transit fees, some of which could have gone to Armenia. By the way, at the end of 2020, natural gas, now I've just finished the 2020, natural gas from Azerbaijan reached Italy and Eastern Europe through a new $45 billion gas pipeline that bypassed Armenia. So, to break this deadlock, Armenia needs to understand that the war is over and it's time to make peace and possibly some money. Thank you for being there. This Contreras Report International Edition starts 2021 with a positive report about a part of the world that was in combat a few weeks ago. Don't forget to subscribe to the report here or wherever you watch it so that you will be notified when new postings are made. If you want to communicate with me, the email address is on screen in a few seconds. Contact me anytime. I'm Raul Lowry Contreras. This is the Contreras Report International Edition.